Well, the hands you guys are used.
Are we ready? All right, well, good afternoon. Over the last several days, our state has been preparing for Tropical Storm Bertha, and we have taken the storm seriously from the beginning. And that's what we all should do every time a storm system threatens our state. The latest forecast is extremely encouraging. I want to thank everyone out there who prayed real hard that this storm would not affect Louisiana as other storms have in the past. After my comments, I'm going to turn it over to our climatologist, Jay Grimes, who will kind of go over the latest on Bertha. And so, again, the good news is that the storm is likely not to produce the type of rainfall or wind event that it could have. But I want to remind everyone of something important, that forecasts can change, and even a weaker storm can produce dangerous rainfall, localized flooding, and hazardous travel conditions. You know, we saw that just a month ago when Tropical Storm Bertha visited us and devastated Avals Parish. We had all thought that we were out of the woods, and then Avals Parish received 30 inches of rain in a 5-hour period, I think it was, which was a record for the state. And that parish is still reeling from the effects of that event. Families have been devastated. Homes were flooded. Businesses were damaged. First responders were working around the clock to rescue people from a very dangerous situation. The recovery in Avals Parish is still underway. And I want the people of Avals Parish to know that we have not forgotten them. We continue to support their recovery effort, even as we monitor Tropical Storm Bertha. In fact, I believe the First Lady's Foundation has distributed another $150,000 to charitable events, to charitable organizations in the Avals Parish area who are working to help families recover from that event. And again, that storm reminds us that it doesn't take a major hurricane to do major damage in communities in Louisiana. So today's forecast is encouraging, but it doesn't mean that we should be complacent. And that means that, remember, if you live in an area that normally floods, right? Then you should heed the warnings, and you should understand that these types of systems can again cause your area to flood, and take the necessary precaution. That's why we continue to encourage people to go to our getagameplan.org app, right? Get a Game Plan app, or you can just go on the website at getagameplan.org. That website provides, and the website and app provides important resources to help you build an emergency plan and to prepare your home, protect your family, and know what steps to take before, during, and after severe weather affects you. And so now this brings me to the city of New Orleans. We have been working closely since Sunday with the state and local partners to make sure that the city was prepared. It was one of the things that I spoke to General Mahfouz on Sunday morning about, and we have been working very closely with the Sewage and Water Board. CIPRA has been working with our levee authorities to make sure that had this storm turned out to be a much greater threat or produced more heavier rainfall, that we were ready. And so since Sunday, we have seen the Sewage and Water Board take a number of steps in order to prepare for what could have been a worst case scenario. As of today, GOSEP has supplied 30,000 sandbags to Orleans Parish. Over 90% of the major drainage pumps are available and ready for operation. Flood forecasting teams were actively monitoring the conditions and running storm models. Floodgates remain in their normal operating positions. All of the Army Corps of Engineers pumps are currently in service, and emergency backup generators that would provide 24 25 hertz power are available right now if it's needed. All of the underpass pumps are in service, or there are standby pumps available for those underpass pumping stations that were down. And again, let me make sure you understand. Sunday, I instructed General Mahfouz to contact all of our levee boards and the Sewage and Water Board and said, okay, we want to report on what is up and what may be down. And within 24 hours, they were able to get back to us with that. I want to also say thank you again, congratulate the Sewage and Water Board for what I think is a great dry fire exercise. Again, this could have been worse than it seems is going to be the case, but they were willing to man all of the pumps, to physically man those pumps, had this storm turned out to be a lot worse than it seems it's going to be. And you know what? That's exactly how government should operate. Preparing for a storm before the storm gets there and not having to react once danger basically is upon us, or the worst case scenario comes to pass. And, you know, this is something that I expect every level of government to stay focused on, and that's its core responsibility of protecting people and maintaining the critical infrastructure that protects our communities, and to be ready to respond if conditions change. As Bertha moves through Louisiana, our commitment remains the same and simple, that we will continue working alongside our local leaders, emergency responders, and communities across the state to keep Louisiana safe. Again, remember that being prepared for a storm first starts with you, the citizen. And so again, we want to remind you, we continually urge you to go to our website at getagameplan.org or download the app on your smartphone so that, again, you can go through that checklist, because we're, I don't know, what are we, Jay, about a quarter of a way through hurricane season, right?
Yes.
Huh? Not 50%, huh?
No, not even
No,
close.
not even close, right? So this is a good time for people to recognize that what could have been the worst case scenario, just because it's the best case scenario, that you should be prepared. So again, if you hadn't downloaded the app, we again encourage you to download the getagameplan.org app. And with that, I will pass it on to Jay to give us the latest on the storm.
Well, thank you, Governor. Thank you, General, as well. And Governor, I would say that we've had 2 preseason games. We're still not into the heart of the season here. So with Bertha, good news, as the governor pointed out. By the way, for those of you who may not be aware, Bertha did make landfall just a few minutes ago, a little bit further north than we expected, up in the St. Bernard Parish rather than Plaquemines Parish. But the good news here is that the shear, the dry air continue to do their work. Bertha will weaken steadily as it moves inland. The dry air, that wind shear, and the interaction with land is going to take most of the punch out of the storm. So you really don't expect to see tropical storm force winds to extend very far into the state before those begin to subside. Yes, it is going to get breezy, even downright windy in metro New Orleans, but it's not going to be very problematic. Rains, pockets of heavy rain, certainly going to be possible, not only today, but through Thursday on the backside of the system as it pushes to the west. But again, not anticipating anything too problematic. Pockets of flooding will be possible, particularly in those places that routinely flood. And we're going to keep our eyes on the potential for some coastal flooding, a little bit of storm surge there. But in most cases, the surge is going to be 3 feet or less. That's manageable for those coastal communities. They see that on a not frequent basis, but frequently enough to be prepared for. With a little bit of luck, this really is going to be an in and out kind of situation. But as the governor points out, don't let your guard down yet. We've still got to wait for the backside of the circulation, those rain bands that currently are as far east as the Florida Panhandle. We've got to wait for those to come through before we can fully exhale. But the way things look right now, with the main energy of the storm about 120 to 150 miles southwest of the main circulation moving into St. Bernard Parish, that is a very good setup for us in terms of minimal impacts from this tropical storm. So I'll leave it with that and be happy to answer any questions later. Governor?
Yeah, again, I want to thank all of the public servants out there that have been working since Sunday to prepare us for this storm. We are grateful that this storm event seems to be one that we're not going to have to activate many of the services that would be required had the city or the state been impacted by a much more dangerous storm. So again, I want the citizens to know that this team has been working since Sunday to make sure that we had everything in place had the storm been a much more serious event. But again, I would remind the citizens of Louisiana that the responsibility also falls on you to be prepared when these weather events occur. And so we would encourage you to go to getagameplan.org. With that, we will take any questions.
We're just gonna start with weather questions, and then other questions can happen after.
Yeah, y'all got other questions? Yeah.
Governor, what's the main concern here? It sounds like mainly localized flooding, but what's the biggest concern that's going to hit the city?
Look, I think the biggest concern about this storm was the path of the storm in basically they could have placed the storm right over the city of New Orleans. We know that the city of New Orleans is the most vulnerable city in the state to excessive rainfall events. And we know that the amount of rainfall that the city can take is really not a lot. And that's if all of the pumps are working and there is no problems. And so, starting Sunday, I wanted to stress upon our team to make sure that we were checking our list, making sure that the pumps were activated, what would happen if pumps went down, what areas of the city would be the most vulnerable. And I think that this storm actually gives us a great exercise in making sure that we know the things that we could do in order to be able to get people out of harm's way and making sure that we can get to people if the worst case scenario happens. Again, I was telling the UCG Inside that for me, it's not a Category 5 hurricane, right? That keeps me up at night when I'm dealing with the city of New Orleans. It's actually a slow moving tropical depression or tropical storm, just like what this could have been. And so again, I think this was a great exercise in understanding what vulnerabilities the city still has. Again, I can tell you since last year, and I would remind everyone, last year during Hurricane Francine was the first time in that the folks here at GOSEP had said that the governor's office had actually leaned in and spoke to the Sewage and Water Board before a hurricane approached the city of New Orleans. And that's something that we wanted to make routine.
You referenced that following that Sunday report that you would ask that all pumps, or make sure that all pumps are manned with the Sewage and Water Board. Did it surprise you that that wasn't the case before? And what other revelations did you discover with that report then?
Well, I mean, look, I think that every time a natural disaster affects the state of Louisiana, it's incumbent upon the elected officials to go back and find out what they did right and what they did wrong. And I think that after Hurricane Francine, right, we recognized that there were some problems with pumps not being manned. In fact, supposedly, I don't want to get into it, but the city flooded a couple of weeks ago, I guess, and supposedly they were not manned. Again, that was not maybe one of those events that they could see coming ahead of time, but I think it shows the importance of having the pumps manned. We're going to try to do more in cooperation with the city Sewage and Water Board to try to be more proactive in ensuring that those pumps are manned, and that they're operating, and that and look, things happen, pumps break, but we want to make sure that maintenance is done. We want to make sure that the pumps are in the best condition, and that if a pump is not operating, we need to know about it so that we can move the assets in place to compensate for that pump not working. Yes, ma'am.
Have you had discussions with the leadership of the Sewage and Water Board about making sure that the equipment is properly functioning? And what will you do, even though this is a good scenario with Bertha, but going forward? in that case?
Yeah, look, we have since Hurricane Francine, we have consistently been in communication with the city and sewage and water board. It's something that GOSEP works on consistently, even after hurricane season is really when they get real busy and making sure that we've learned what has happened from the prior hurricane season. I think that the things that you're seeing the sewage and water board do in response to this storm are a product of the communications from Hurricane Francine and that are continuing. And we're continuing. Look, it's not perfect right now. It's not where I would like it. I would like to see more modeling and more information readily available to GOSEP. Again, it's not a criticism of the Sewage and Water Board, but it's some things that I think that we can work on together. Have we? Yeah, we talked to him. You talked to him today.
Yeah, we between us and the Corps of Engineers, yes, sir.
Yeah, and the Corps is here as well. Look, I will say, I think that the good news for the citizens of the state is that our agencies are working great together. The sheriff's departments, our levy boards, CIPRA, the Corps of Engineers, everybody is really working to make sure that we're focused on protecting life and property.
Any more water questions?
Yes, question for Jay. So is the path of the storm, like, do people in Lafayette Parish have anything to worry about when it comes to the storm or anywhere in that region?
Probably not. It doesn't mean the storm will be over for Acadiana and Southwest Louisiana, but the storm will continue to weaken. And I'd like to point out one of or reinforce one of the things the governor was saying there. If we didn't have this shear going on, we probably would be looking at a hurricane making landfall today. So that's why we start preparing early, because we don't have a lot of flex time if things were to go south. As for the rest of the coastal parishes, they need to be aware that localized flooding is still a potential here, but we're not looking at widespread parish-wide or multi-parish flooding like we saw with the effects of Arthur, which was a storm that, if you remember, was doing all of its action, and the core of the storm was back in Texas. The heat of the energy was 160, 170 miles east here in central Louisiana. So all of these storms are unique, and that's why we want people to just stay aware, stay weather aware over the next couple of days. There's a decent chance that Bertha is just going to collapse in the next 48 to 60 hours or so. That's good news for everybody, including our friends in Texas. But don't count on that. Stay weather aware the next few days until you know that this storm is no longer a threat.
Now, is that the same story for the southern region of Acadiana, like Vermilion Parish?
Sure.
St. Mary?
Any of the coastal parishes, that if there's going to be any significant flooding, it's most likely in those parishes. By the time the storm moves from southeast Louisiana into south central Louisiana, Acadiana, and then over towards closer to the Texas coast, the winds are not going to be a factor. It's going to all be about how much rain is still in the system. Now, some of that will also depend on whether the system does try to redevelop out over the coastal waters. There's a really low end potential for that. Right now, it's not a critical concern, but that's one of the reasons why we want to stay weather aware, even as Bertha really weakens over the next 24 hours.
Any more? Any off topic?
Governor, we know you have a big event coming up soon with LSU Athletics at the Governor's Mansion. Can you give us any more information about what we might expect from that event?
Which one?
Your big event with LSU Athletics next.
Oh, yeah. All I can tell you is going to be great. Look, I think that right now, everyone recognizes that college football is broken. Okay, and there are many universities that are in dire financial straits, and LSU's not in great financial straits. I mean, it's athletic. TAF is the funds at TAF have been depleted, and so we've been working since we've gotten a new president, a new athletic director, some new coaches, in making sure that we put that system on solid footing. I'm as concerned about LSU as I am the other university programs as well. And so we, over the last 6 months, we've been working on a model that we think is going to help strengthen the financial stability of the programs. We want an opportunity to visit with those folks who have consistently helped to keep the athletic department over at LSU afloat, right, through personal contributions. After we have an opportunity to visit with them and get some feedback from them, I'm hoping within the next week or so after that, we'll make a public announcement, and then you'll be able to ask all of the questions about it when we go through a very detailed summary of what we plan to do. But I will tell you this: it has the potential to really change the game at LSU, and really we hope is a model for many universities around the country as well.
Sabrina, do you have a question? I know you.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
It was reported that you topic or
Off topic.
Yeah. Go
it
ahead.
was reported that you spoke with
Yes.
President Trump about the indictment against AG Merle. Can you say anything about what you said to him or what he said?
Yeah, I did not speak to the president about the indictment of the now dismissed indictment of the attorney general. I mean, I would see no need to have to talk to Brown. I do know that Congressman Clay Higgins has called for a federal investigation of the incident. I echo his request as well. I think the feds need to come in. I can tell you this: if I would have when I was the attorney general, or if the current attorney general would have engaged in the kind of shenanigans that went on in the criminal justice court system in Orleans, I can promise you that all of y'all would have been calling for the feds to investigate us.
Governor, and the Attorney General, is there any chance that you may view the move by the special prosecutor and by extension the mayor and the city council to dismiss the 16 count indictment as a way to perhaps lower the political temperature and a way to maybe possibly move forward and to work together in that regard instead of possibly dragging this on any further? Let me get your take on that.
Well, I think if we're going to get to that topic, I think it's important to allow the attorney general to say her piece first.
Thank you. Thank you all for asking questions about this and for being here and wanting to hear more about it. I'll respond to that question in a minute. First of all, I want to say thank you to my husband, John, to my lawyers, Blake and Laura, Laura Rodriguez, Blake Curie, and Kyle Shonikas, who's not here. And they have worked tirelessly for 20 days straight to work on this with me and address this problem. My husband's been there. This has been difficult for all of us. It is not a joke. We take it very, very seriously. And I certainly find it extraordinarily disturbing that a group of people in New Orleans who still remain largely unidentified were able to weaponize the grand jury system to indict a sitting attorney general for something that is not a crime. And I want to reiterate that. What I did in sending those letters is a very ordinary thing. Lawyers do it. Attorney generals do it. If anybody in law enforcement might do it, whether it's verbally or by a letter or by a written statement. I sent a letter that advised them what the law was and that they had broken the law. In our view, they had already broken the law and that there are consequences for that. And those consequences are written in the law. I didn't write that law. The legislature wrote that law. I just explained it to them. And the consequences for breaking the law are threatening to people sometimes. I'm sure it is. I mean, when you face jail time for doing something wrong, I'm sure you feel very threatened by that. But that's not what the law criminalizes. And so what I did was not a crime. It was never a crime. And I just want to thank all of the people, all of my friends and the sheriffs, the district attorneys, my colleagues and everyone around me who showed huge support for me over this and expressed their outrage over what was happening in New Orleans, because it won't just happen to me. What they have done is open the door to something that could happen to anybody. And that's why it's not over. It's not over. And it's not because I'm angry. It's not because any of us want to retaliate against anybody. It's because what they did can now be weaponized and used against other people. That dismissal of that indictment today was not an effort to simply get us all back together to be friends again. First of all, you can't be friends with somebody who wants to put you in jail for 80 years. So, you know, friendship is not really on the table. Mutual professional courtesy and professional working relationships, absolutely. We have always extended that to the city of New Orleans and its leadership, no matter how bad their decision-making is. But this is about bad leadership and bad decision-making in New Orleans. And they need to be, we will continue to hold them accountable for bad decisions and bad leadership. And I'll continue to tell them if they break the law, and I will continue to do my job as Attorney General, and I won't be threatened by this action. But we need to make sure that it never happens again. I mean, they handcuffed reporters outside a courtroom that should have been open to the public. That's disturbing. A special prosecutor was appointed with conflicts of interest that were readily identifiable in public records. Readily identifiable in public records. That shouldn't have happened either. The whole thing is just a bizarre circumstance. The law that was used to start this whole thing has never, no one in history can remember it ever being used before. I have concerns about that law, and I intend to take that up later with the legislature. Any roving grand juror who believes that an offense has been committed, no probable cause, when the law very clearly does not criminalize this conduct, it does not take a lawyer to figure that out. Everything I did is protected by the First Amendment and the plain language of this statute. So this isn't hard, y'all. And yet, still, this was allowed to proceed, or I was indicted and then threatened with being arrested and charged with a $400,000 bond. I invite you all to go look and see how high the judge who set that bond has set bond for second-degree murderers, people charged with second-degree murder in New Orleans. I can tell you the answer. It's about $268,000.
General, besides getting the legislature to pass new laws, you say it's not over. You want accountability, people to be held accountable.
I want transparency.
Transparency. What else do you want? Do you want to see a federal investigation? City officials
Yes.
say they had nothing to do with this.
I don't believe that's true.
When you say unidentified individuals weaponizing the system, do you have an idea of who that is, and what is your best evidence for that?
I think there's a lot of unanswered questions about how this came to be. And I think that we all deserve those answers. And that until we get those answers, I just, I think that we can't resolve this, and everyone faces jeopardy. I certainly would continue to face jeopardy. I think this all began because a small group, maybe not a small group, I don't know, people in New Orleans were angry about legislation. And they wanted to blame Baton Rouge. I mean, you just look at the statements that were made in the press after the indictment came down, and it was all about Baton Rouge needs to stop picking on New Orleans. We have together, all of us have spent more time and energy invested in the city of New Orleans than any governor or attorney general in decades. And we're not leaving. We're staying there. We are going to continue to invest our time, our staff, our people, to work for the city of New Orleans and continue to support the city of New Orleans and the good citizens of New Orleans. That does not mean that we have to approve or support bad leadership and bad decision-making.
The special prosecutor in the case.
Just one at a time.
Thank you. The special prosecutor in the case apparently wrote, going through the court records, that I tried to talk him out of it and couldn't. Hope I'm more persuasive with the jury. And apparently saying jurors were making patriotic statements. What do you make of that? And why do you think?
I mean, what I make of it is that there was this thing was this was the leakiest ship you've ever seen. I mean, it was sinking like the Titanic. It was so leaky. There was more information that came out. All of you knew more about what was happening inside that grand jury room than I did at the time that I found out that it existed. So,
Which is a crime.
that is a crime.
I just want you to understand something. Like, that is a crime. I think the thing that is the most disappointing is the response from this media about the criminal justice system in that city. We've got judges on those benches who literally acquit people just willy-nilly of murder, of very violent crimes. Y'all just look the other way. Okay. The legislature goes out and passes a series of laws that the very same people who are criticizing that law voted for it. Y'all don't call them out. You don't say, oh, the mayor, how is it that you supported what the governor and the legislature did years ago when you were in the legislature? And now all of a sudden don't like it. I mean, where are y'all? Honestly, that's the question. Sabrina, that's the question I want from y'all. Where are y'all when that criminal justice system has been spiraling out of control? Because by the way, the citizens of that city were living in one of the most dangerous cities in the world. And it wasn't the leadership in that city that saved them. It was me and the attorney general and the people that are standing around here. And yet for that, the ruling class of that city decides, you know what? We don't like that. We're going to show y'all. We're going to indict a sitting attorney general. Then when they realize that that doesn't work, they're like, oh, well, we want to be forgiven. That's what it is. Oh, well, look, we're victims. Those letters. Let me tell you something. This is what I don't understand here. Tell me this. Okay? The DA, he writes a letter saying he's named as a victim. What he should have done is said, I've never been a victim, if he really believes what he's written. Okay? The mayor, importantly, the grand jury made an independent decision. Well, you know what? That's what I want to know. And quite frankly, every citizen of the state should want to know is whether or not that was truly an independent decision. How many of y'all actually believe, to the people in Louisiana right now, how many of you actually believe that a grand jury of citizens in New Orleans, sui spontaneously, okay, just decided that a letter sent by the attorney general to the city council was a criminal act? How many of y'all believe that? Those are the questions that need to be answered.
Well, and I would say this too. The district attorney and the mayor both went on television after they received those letters and incorrectly cited the law and said that the letters were a crime. They're not a crime. Read the law. Go look at, you can run it through Claude, ChatGPT, Westlaw. I don't care what you do. It ain't hard to figure it out that this is not a crime. And it's been long established, clearly established in federal constitutional law that this is not a crime. And so they irresponsibly and incorrectly went on television and said, oh, this might have been a crime of public intimidation. No, it wasn't. It never was. And they knew that. That was wrong. It was irresponsible. It was legally incorrect. And you would expect the district attorney to know it. Sabrina, you have a question. What's
Yes. So General, you said you want answers. You, in response to my question, said you don't believe what the city officials said. How do you get those answers? The legislature does not go back into session until the spring elections.
Maybe.
How do you get those answers?
Maybe.
Unless
That's right. I mean, they're right now, they're not scheduled to go back. But I can tell you this, I've got a lot of legislators wanting to go back into session.
And do you plan to call lawmakers?
I don't know. I want to see, I'd like to see some transparency here. Yeah. Huh?
Look, I'm the attorney general. I prosecute cases. I mean, I look at this from both sides and I'm trying to evaluate how to make sense out of what they did and not do more damage to the system than they've already done. That, it's disturbing what they did. And I don't know yet who they all are, but I would like to know. And I think you should all like to know. We have public records requests that are pending. We intend to enforce those public records requests and expand to those public records requests. So if there are public records, then they should have to respond to those. The district attorney's office was recused. He said multiple times that they had nothing to do with it. And I can tell you that I have had multiple people tell me that that is not true. And so I need to know the answer to that. Is it true or is it not true? we're going to find out. And, there's civil litigation that could follow too. I think this was a malicious prosecution.
May I follow up with the governor? Governor, what is the status of your request to have state police look into the grand jury proceedings? What did state police find?
I am not going to comment on an ongoing investigation.
Did you talk to the president about New Orleans?
I did not. Let me tell you this. The last time I spoke to the president about New Orleans, you know what it was about? It was about begging him to extend the FEMA projects that have been going on for 20 years in that city, that city has not been able to find completion. On behalf of the mayor, of which the president graciously granted. Okay? The last time, again, for the record, the last time I spoke to the president was to ask him to help the city of New Orleans, because they evidently can't help themselves on projects that have been going on since Hurricane Katrina. So that's the last time I spoke to him.
Governor, you said the lawmakers are interested in going back into session. What do they want to do?
They want to look at ways that they can take more control of the court system in the city of New Orleans. I mean, let me explain something to you. Like, New Orleans has been so special, right? That they, under our Constitution, carved themselves out of the Constitution for their criminal courts. Their criminal courts have been paid for by the taxpayers of the entire state of Louisiana, 100%. That is completely different than any other criminal court system in this state. They're the only parish that divides their criminal and their civil courts systems. They had 4 assessors, 2 sheriffs, 2 different clerks. And yet, legislators in the past, since going back, I think, if I'm not mistaken, into the 1980s, have consistently tried to consolidate those offices and bring that parish more in line with the way that all the other parishes in the state are run. And that's what we did this session. That's all we did. And for that, they indicted the Attorney General.
Following the indictment of the AG, estimated, if you had to say, how much did this cost taxpayers, energy by y'all, and y'all are both legal experts? What punishment for a crime for like this that y'all stated do you see fit?
I can tell you that I did a, back of the napkin calculation of how much I owe my lawyers right now, and it's close to $250,000. And I will ask to be reimbursed for that because I was acting in my official capacity. So that's what the city of New Orleans leadership, who put this thing in motion illegally and improperly, cost the taxpayers of this state. That's not my fault. That's their fault. And they started this. I want to go back again to what they did when they took it upon themselves to ignore my legal advice over and over again and appoint someone to a fictional office that they made up the week of a statewide election for the Senate primary, for the United States Senate. I took that pretty seriously. It could have undermined ballots, voting machines. If the person who had been appointed to this fictional office had showed up and started interfering with the staff and the voting machines and the ballots, it would have undermined all of the ballots in the city of New Orleans. That's how important this was at the time. And yet that has consistently been ignored and underplayed in this. And it is the event that set it all off, because I was in communication with them at the time and I asked them to show restraint. I asked them to wait for the courts to rule. And the irony of all of this is that now, over and over again, they claim that they just need to wait and let the courts rule, that this is a matter for the courts. Well, it's still a matter for the courts. It's going to still be a matter for the courts. It's just going to be a different matter for the courts. But the irony is pretty great that they claimed that they wanted to let all of this, after they indicted me, be a matter for the courts, but they refused that very entreaty from me in the beginning so that they would keep calm instead of creating chaos the week of an election. And so, I still take that very seriously. I just want to walk you through some of the crimes that I've counted that could have been committed here, starting with interfering with a statewide election for federal office, conspiring to violate civil rights laws, conspiracy to rig a grand jury proceeding, conspiracy to interfere with a grand jury proceeding, obstruction of justice, wire fraud, injuring public records, malfeasance, and public intimidation, the law that they charged me with violating. Because we talked to them, I told them that they may be violating the law and that there may be consequences for that. And what did they do? They came after me with an extortionate threat, a threat of actual harm to me personally, to put me in jail for telling them that I am going to carry out my official duties if I am asked to do that by the governor. That meets the definition of public intimidation, not me sending a letter to them. So.
Governor, will the Attorney General be reimbursed for her legal expenses?
Oh, she should be, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. She was acting in the capacity as the Attorney General in her elected capacity. That, guess what? That's the gift that those city leaders in New Orleans have given to the taxpayers of Louisiana.
Will it take legislative action to do that? Can you do it from executive authority?
It really doesn't matter. However, we have to make sure that her attorneys are reimbursed. We will make sure that they're reimbursed. I mean, and think about this. Her attorney spent all of that time and all of that money only for the very same people to then come and say, please dismiss this. Like, let this go away. I mean, think about that. Talk about wasting money.
And I'd go back to the question of, do we think that this is, or either, because I don't think either of us think that this was just because they wanted to get back to some sense of normalcy. I think it's because they want to hide records. So let me be real clear about that. I think that all of that came when we issued subpoenas. And we were in the middle of we were going to be having a status conference on Friday with the judge to discuss the issuance of those subpoenas, and we had more coming. So a subpoena is different from writing a letter where they can say anything they want and they're not under oath and there's no consequences for lying. So I think that you're in a different world when you're asking somebody to respond to a public records law. We can actually enforce that in the courts, and a subpoena can also be enforced in the courts, and they have to sign them under oath, and they also can get to non-public records. So we still have litigation preservation letters that we have issued to a large number of people. And every time I find somebody else that I think one needs to go to, I will issue that letter and remind them that they have a legal obligation to preserve those records.
We have one last question.
What records are being hidden and by who?
I think that there are a lot of communications surrounding both the original letter that the letter that Jason Williams sent to the city council, urging them to essentially create a fictional office and name another individual besides the legal office holder to that office. I think that's a problem, and there are records surrounding that. There are a lot of records, I think, that exist surrounding communications, emails, text messages. I know that there is a lot of concern over there, I think, about people having to produce records. There seems to be a lot of angst about it. So I think that is what motivated this action. I am grateful for it. Let me say that. It was the right thing to do. But let me say what the more right thing to do would have been. For Jason Williams to have said from the beginning, this is not a crime, because he's the district attorney. He should know that it's not a crime. And it's not. I'll brief it for you if you like. I'm happy to show you exactly what all the law is and how easy it is to understand this is not a crime. But he should have known that. He's the district attorney. And instead, even in this letter that he sent, he still calls himself a victim. The implication is that I committed a crime and he's a victim. He's not a victim. He started all of this. So yes, there are records. I'm sure there are records. Some of those may not be public records. And that's why we will continue to pursue litigation that allows us to get any records, even if they are personally kept records.
Can you expound on saying Jason Williams started all?
I mean, it's easy, Sabrina. He wrote the first letter to the council saying for them to appoint that a fictional office had been created and they needed to have a meeting and fill it. I sent a letter on May 8th and said, that's not accurate. Here's all the stuff that he left out of the law. And they still did it. And let me just be clear, because I spoke to them personally during this time. I spoke to JP Morrell, who called and alerted me to the letter that Williams had sent to them. And I called the mayor and said, please don't do this, because you are creating the chaos and uncertainty that he's claiming exists. That does not exist now. Everything is calm. You can call the clerk's office and find out. You can call the Secretary of State. There is no problem. But you will create one if you do this. And they ignored that advice because of their politics. So let me be real clear. They broke the law by creating a fictional office and appointing someone to it during the week of a statewide election, because they were more concerned about their own politics than complying with the law. And the district attorney started it because he wrote the letter. So that's, I mean, it's not hard.
And then let me just close with this. Look, people say, well, what? I can tell you this. A federal investigation is warranted. A state investigation is warranted. The Judiciary Commission should be investigating the judges that were involved. The bar, the Office of Disciplinary Counsel, should be investigating all of those lawyers that were involved. I mean, JP's a lawyer. So I don't know if the conduct that he engaged in shouldn't disbar him. Jason Williams' conduct, he should have his law license ripped from him. I can tell you this, if I would have engaged in that, all of y'all would be calling for my law license. I know that, okay? But for some reason, because it seems to be the other party, it's just like, mum's the word, it's okay. And so, no, it's not okay. It's not okay. You know why? Because the law is supposed to be colorblind, okay? The law, the scales of justice are supposed to be balanced. And that's two things that both the Attorney General and I share as a principle from the very beginning, and how we've treated the city or any other of the criminal courts around the state. Let me just close with reminding everyone that we still do have a tropical storm that I hope just creates a wind event and blows the heat out of here. I want to thank those citizens that took heed. Again, I would urge people, as Jay would say, to be weather aware and weather wise as we go through this hurricane season. Thank you so very much.